Hi, I'm Joni Stuker. I am a founding member of Women in Automotive and so proud to be the host of our Women's Power Lunch series of the summer and fall. You know, the mission of Women in Automotive is straightforward. Our focus is on recruiting, retaining, and developing female employees and leaders in the automotive industry. And I'm proud to say, you know what, guys, we're kicking it. We have some exciting announcements today, Women in Automotive events. Number one, there's a special event coming up July 27th at 1 o'clock Eastern. It's a 90-minute I Am Remarkable virtual workshop sponsored by Google. Now, attendance is limited, so please, if you are interested, reference our website and join immediately. It's just amazing. Our next virtual workshop is going to be on August the 10th. And that is all about sparking career development, allyship, mentorship. WomenPowered Luncheon series, remember, is free and it's dynamic. You can just reference womeninautomotive.com/webinars. I am so stoked that we are pleased to announce we have our in-person dates are set and tickets are available for Automotive Conference in person December 12th and 13th in Orlando, Florida. And the words sound great at the Hyatt Regency Grand Cypress. I just want to stand in the lobby. Details to register, sponsorship opportunities, and to apply to speak are live on the Women in Automotive website. Again, that's womeninautomotive.com. You know, you could purchase your tickets right now and get early bird pricing, which who doesn't want to save a buck? The Women in Automotive officially launched our Women-Powered Mentoring platform, powered by eMentor Connect. Hey, if you're interested in being a mentor, mentee, or sponsor, in the chat, you'll find a sign-up link. Further details on how to register can be found on the Women in Automotive website. Join us today, or then you can email us at info@womeninautomotive.com. It's so inexpensive. It's $129 annual, simple dollars for individuals. The Women Power Mentoring platform is so important. Today, we're talking about customer engagement. I was doing a little reading up and it's amazing. The average human being is hit with about 3,000 messages a day, 3,000, yet we only remember an average of 4. I have with me today a couple really powerful individuals that you're gonna learn so much from and actually have a little laugh with as well. I have Gary May, founder and president of Interactive Marketing and Consulting Services, along with Kathy Gilbert, my sister, Senior Director, Minority Director, Dealer, Women Retail for CDK Global. I want to welcome you both so much. Thanks for doing this. I know everyone's so busy and I appreciate it. I'm going to start with you, Kathy. Give a little background. Tell us about you.
Well, thank you, Joni, and welcome everyone for the to the conference. I'm Kathy Gilbert. I am the Senior Director of Minority Dealer and Women Retail at CDK Global. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. And in my current role, I advocate for over 4,000 of our customers, both minority and women. And the whole goal is to make sure that we take care of our customers from the beginning of their relationship with CDK all the way through to the end. And prior to this role, I also was the director of our customer success organization, where I actually built and led a team of customer success advocates, really focused on how do we put our customer first and what do we do? So I am excited to be here. I'm also a founding board member of Women in Automotive, and I truly, truly value the role that we play in bringing both these programs together and also advocating for our women. So thank you, Joni.
Yay, yay. Welcome. Glad you're here. Hi, Gary. Tell us about you, my friend.
Hi, Joni. Great to be here. Thank you for the invite. Great to be alongside you as well, Kathy. My experience in automotive spans just over 21 years, so feverishly chasing Kathy. And my experience covers heavily the retail and OEM side, and the last 14 years consulting with dealerships, both on the marketing and the sales side. And also bookending Kathy, one of the newest members of the board to Women in Automotive. So once again, thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love you two chasing each other. I'm like, I've got 34 years. I'm like, prior to that, I sold cars. Oh my God, how old am I? All right, I want you guys to just tell me one word that best describes you. Kathy, what's your one word?
Tenacious. I am pretty determined. I'm persistent about things that I value and that are important. And advocating for women in this forum and with women in automotive is a wonderful example of that tenacious.
In my word,
I love it. Gary, what's your
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
one?
And actually, mine is driven.
Okay. I like supercalifragilistic. I remember that, don't you? That's good. All right, tenacious and driven. Let's get started. Okay, let's really talk about when you hear the words customer engagement. Kathy, what's your initial thought? What does it even mean? Those two big words.
So customer engagement to me is really that connection that a company or a person has with their customer and the person they're doing business with. And as I've been in this industry and I've been in this field, you hear customer experience, you hear customer success, you hear customer service. And all of those things really tie to that interaction that you have with the customer. So when I think about engagement, engagement is a broader connection. It's the feeling that customer has about your business. It's the feeling they have about how well you're able to deliver value for them. And ultimately, it's based on that experience you have during that interaction, during every touch point. It's the success. And customer success for us is both the reactive. How well am I addressing that customer need? How well am I answering that individual problem that the customer has right there in the moment? It's more individual. When you think about success too, think about it from a proactive. That customer just bought a product from me. So how do I make sure that that customer is getting the most benefit out of that product that they have? So customer service, customer success, all that ties to the experience that you have, that interaction with the customer. And then ultimately it gets back to the overall engagement. Engagement says every opportunity that that customer has to do business with us, am I making sure that I'm building a solid foundation? I'm giving them the perception and the value that they expect to get from us. And then ultimately, do they want to come back? Do they trust me enough as a business partner, as a strategic partner to really want to engage with me? So it's that connection that you have, and that connection is built on so many things.
I mean, it's almost daunting in a way when you're describing all of it. It really can be for so many individuals or business owners and so on. Gary, give me your input when you hear those words, customer engagement. What's your initial thought?
Well, most of what we do working with dealers, OEMs, third parties, has a lot to do with the basis, the fundamentals of engagement. For us in our approach, it's creating an environment where that prospect or customer wants to communicate and be involved. We all know how to define engagement. And as Kathy already brought up, there's lots of ways, pieces of the pie that fit in to what overall is engagement. And there's also ways of measuring that, whether it's software-based, whether it's something much more endemic. However, we have to provide the fundamentals. And one of those core pillars is listening.
Absolutely.
Validating customers is a second one, and being able to deliver on either personal, brand, or other promises. So for us, being on the receiving end, customer engagement has a lot to do with setting and then meeting both expectations as well as what is in it for the customer.
Okay, so my first reaction to what you're both saying is, so how I know that we've got a lot of time together, but how do you do that? So you're talking fundamentals. So you said listening. Okay, what are some of the fundamentals? Kathy and Gary, what?
Go ahead, Gary. If you like, I can speak to it as well.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, when I think about the fundamentals, I think about the interaction. And so I start more at the higher level of the culture of the organization. It starts with the leader really putting that customer first, really understanding that an engaged, a highly engaged customer is going to talk about the organization. They're going to stay with the organization longer. They're going to buy more from the organization. So when I think about how you do it, I think it starts with really understanding who your customer is, and then also looking at your organization all the way from the leader at the top to the to the frontline person that's engaging that customer to say, am I meeting the customer's expectation? And that doesn't necessarily mean the customer's always right. It just means, am I meeting the expectation? And if I can't, for whatever reason, am I giving that customer clear communication, an explanation, a follow-up so that that customer understands that I value that engagement, I value the relationship. And then the more you let that customer know you value them as a customer, the more likely they are to trust you and to want to stay and continue to do business.
Absolutely. Gary, what were you going to say, kiddo?
So the listening component allows us to do a couple very important or a few very important things. One of the tenets that we coach sales BDC environments as well as company executives on is what is the art of selling, not upselling, not closing. There's a lot of closers in the business. The art of selling is setting expectations. When we go out of our way to set expectations and then follow up on that, we've done one very important, let alone critical thing. The second part of listening is being able to validate a customer. When you're able to validate, regurgitate back, emphasize what they're looking for, people believe that they're listened to and that you can provide them with an excellent product and service. So for us, an approach, core tenet, is being able to listen properly, active listening, 2 ears on, 1 mouth off. And so to build on that is also setting expectations based on what you've heard. So whether you're selling a vehicle, you're selling service contracts, you're selling financing, you're selling software, it really comes down to listening, understanding, and then setting expectations.
And Joni, I would
yeah,
add one quick thing to that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key things that we do is surveys, right? Customer surveys. So speaking to Gary's point about listening is getting that voice of the customer, that feedback, so that I know, am I meeting your expectation? I may think I am because I delivered the product, I installed it, and everything worked well. But I don't know, once you kind of got in to start using it, is it meeting your expectations? And so it's really important for that feedback loop to make sure that you're asking the question, you're delivering the service, and then you do the follow-up to see, did it actually meet your expectations the way I thought? So customer surveys are another good way of getting that feedback to make sure you're on the right track.
Okay, good. And I want to get into that a little bit later about how, because the first word, when you hear survey, you think, oh, good gosh, no, I'm out. Right? Yeah, no, thanks. I'll take a survey. So do you think today, in our world today, is the strong customer engagement more important than ever? Is it overkill? Where are we at today in 2021?
I think it's more important than ever. And the reason I say that is because our expectations have changed, right? In light of 2020, the middle of a pandemic, it turned our world upside down. It forced us to look at doing things differently. And so what I expect now may be different than what I expected 2 or 3 years ago because the world has changed. And so it's more important to me now than ever before to really understand what is the customer looking for and how can we best help them.
Okay, but then Gary, how many dealers do you hear say, I just can't wait for things to get back to normal?
Exactly.
I just want to get back to the way things were. I didn't have to worry about customer engagement. What the heck, right, Gary? It's like,
well, fundamentally, we've always needed to concentrate on that and listen. However, what's really happened, and keep in mind, I started selling cars off internet leads 21 years ago when there wasn't really a roadmap or a footprint. The way that dealerships who've coached for years have heard me describe it this way: you would have found me selling cars at the same time when people were still afraid to put their credit card for $24.95 on a website for a book, this thing called Amazon.com. I was selling $50,000 GMC Denali's, which are now $100,000. So a lot has changed, and yet nothing has changed. And a little fun fact here in our webinar today: the automotive internet just turned 27. So you think about how far we've gone from 1994 to today, and how far we've also not come at the same time. In addition to what Kathy brought up, there also is a bend today. There's a lot more automation and outsourced communication, whether it's a SaaS provider, whether you're using your CRM software inside your dealership, if you're a dealer, salesperson, service person, finance person. So there's a lot more automation. And to leverage a point that Kathy already brought up in regard to COVID and even now inventory constraints, the perception is that, oh, we have more time. There's a lot more things we can do. However, we're doing that with, for most dealerships across the US, fewer assets, fewer human capital, fewer headcount. So when you think about it, a lot more tech has become involved. So we've gotten also more automated, which has a risk tied to it. So we
What's
really
the
need to
risk?
focus
What's the risk?
not engaging with the customer to the degree or the level that we should. In coaching sales staffs every day, we get to see that risk live. And in working with north of 900 dealerships in the last almost 14 years of consulting, we not only see this with different size dealerships, different area dealerships, it also has to deal with skill set. It also has to do with how we onboard our people, our human resources. So really it comes down to, how do we set expectations to communicate? Kathy said earlier, it's an organizational aspect. It's from the owner up or owner down, depending what your perspective is, Mr. Mrs. Owner of said companies. So a lot of it has to do, if we're going to be successful, a lot of it has to do with the initial setting expectations, proper communication skills, and that follow-up. I'll add one other essential element to what was already brought up of surveys, and that is the reviews, the things that we see publicly, because quite frankly, for automotive retail, CSI, SSI is not a consumer facing aspect until a dealer talks about it or an OEM talks about it. It's an internal facing aspect. So we need to be really executing well on that public perception, because people buy from who they like and they trust. And a lot of that has to do with communication.
It is communication. It's also, we can't forget, it's people. No matter how tech we are, it's people. And I always say that's the most important part, is don't forget that. That's the baseline, I think, of how this all works. Kathy, what are different pathways or ways that people can define true? I know we're saying, hey, listening skills, but what are different ways that a business owner can really help improve their customer engagement strategies, process?
The first is to really understand what your process is today, and so we've talked about whether you need to change or pivot because of everything that's gone on, or if you kind of keep status quo. But I think the pathway is really understanding, one, who am I as a business, who am I as a company, and what do I have to offer, and then making sure that meets the expectations of the customers that I'm working with. Because I would tell you, I'm not necessarily a big social person. I have friends and customers that want to communicate with me that way. And so part of looking at how I do business may not be the same way that my customers do business, or that my customers want to do business with me. So when I think of different pathways, it's making yourself open to doing things differently based on the input and the data that you're given. I think about what Gary said and looking at some of the trends, and I think data is becoming one of the bigger trends that's happening, where we're starting to really look at the data, not just what we think, but we're looking at hard numbers, and that data is then telling us, are we doing things the right way? And it also enlightens us or informs us as to things that we may need to tweak in our process to make sure that we're delivering for the customer. But I think the different pathways really are dictated by the expectations that we have from our customers.
Absolutely. And to add on that, number one, we all should be focused always on WIFM, what's in it for me. Because the customer doesn't always know, other than the tech, how did we communicate with them? What is their preferred method? The customer doesn't always know what they're going to come in contact with or what the experience is going to be like. So all customers, we experience this every day: new restaurant, new retailer we buy from, new airline. that we're going to fly as people are getting back into flying. The planes are very full, flying almost every week. So a lot of that has to do with the what's in it for me, and always remembering, and Joni, you already brought this up, the customer is not always right. However, we always need to intend to take care of them, to set expectations. Customer engagement has a lot to do with what is at the end of it for them. What is their benefit? What are they receiving? Whether, again, it's a car, service contract, aftermarket packages, etc., service after sale. What is it that they're looking for long term? How much of those processes have we not only analyzed, but in that customer survey, customer feedback, and this is the part away from reviews, Kathy teed this up a little earlier, how many times do you sit down with your customer and say, what would have made this experience even better? What did you like? What could be improved? Did you have a different or more meaningful experience somewhere else that we can add to what we do? When we get hand-to-hand combat, face-to-face, eye-to-eye with our customers that are dropping 10 grand or 100 grand, they're going to tell us what they want. That is the best feedback we can ever get. And it's very different than surveys. And dare I say, it's even different than an online review, is having that really face-to-face interaction.
You guys, you mentioned, which I think I agree 100%, but it's like defining like who I am, expectation. But do you have any guiding points? How does a person decide that? How do I decide who I am? And my expectations of my customers, like how those, I agree with all that, but how do you define who I am? I think I'm amazing. No, you're not. Darn it. Why not? No. But so how do you define that? Like who I am? Should a business, I guess, what should a person seek as far as that definition?
From a business perspective, I think we kind of know based on the services that you provide and the audience, right? Being in automotive, we know what the automotive industry is and the services we provide to the industry. But I would tell you as a customer,
Thank you.
I look at, is this business providing the same value that I'm looking for, right? So whether I'm looking to purchase a vehicle or if I'm looking to purchase software or hardware from the company, I want a company that operates, thinks, and has some of the same core values that I do. And I'll add in there, because I'm a diverse female, I look for companies that support diversity and inclusion, that talk about it, not just when I'm standing in the room, but when I look at the media, when I look at their advertisement, when I look at what their employees are saying, all of that matters, because that tells me that there's a culture of inclusivity, a culture of diversity. So as a customer, I'm looking for that business. And I think Gary mentioned it earlier, that you do business with people that you trust, that that have a relationship with, and that's how you build it. And I also think it ties to the employees that you have as well. So as an organization, you need to know who you are and what you're going to deliver. And as a customer, I'm going to look and see if your goals and your values align with mine. And then that's kind of how I want to build and establish the relationship. But it also plays out throughout the customer life cycle, because if somewhere after we've built this great relationship, you do something really crazy, and now all of a sudden we can't be friends anymore, then that affects our relationship as well. So I think that engagement is not just the beginning of how you establish, but it's also, to Gary's point, of how do you keep making sure that you're delivering against that relationship and you're building that engagement where customers really value you and want to keep doing business.
And when we think about it too, it's we value in the beginning. There should never be an end. We always are there, right? It's a continual process forever, whether it's a retail side or whatever. And I think that the message too today, customer engagement needs to be personalized.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't you?
Absolutely. It definitely needs to be personalized. It has to be, because now we're doing so many things differently. I mean, you look at, from a technology perspective, I got my cell phone, I got my iPad, I got my mobile devices, I got my computer. I mean, you have all these different devices, and companies have to look at, how do I appeal to that customer where they are? So if you just try to send me an email and think that that's the only way you're going to communicate with me,
you're done. Yeah.
You're
done, my
friend.
friend.
What was your earlier point? 3,000 communications coming in.
Oh my gosh, I have to say something funny. I'll never forget. It's probably 26 years ago, but I was at this dealership. This dealer is so frustrated by the internet. He goes, "I don't want to talk about it." He said, "It's going away." I go, I don't think so. I have a hunch this one's here to stay, but it's really good. Hey, Gary, tell me a little bit about on the core side of what you do. What would you say are effective messages? How to drive conversations, email, text, voicemails. Give me some of that. Your baseline.
Sure. So most of the time, it has to be based first on customized communication. One thing that happens a lot is we look at that customer information the first time. Where did they come from? Was it our website? Was it a third party? Are they a repeat customer? And inherently, there are limitations that our CRM, the software, and not just CRM, other pieces, the data coming over from partners, third parties, et cetera, where we might be falling short. So first of all, we need to understand and customize the communication so it's tailored for each individual user, each individual prospect, each individual customer. So that's the first part. Some of the newer, more agile software shows where your customers are connecting. That shows, yes, they're more adept at responding to text than answering phone calls or responding to emails, etc. So we have to have a very measured, very data-driven, there it is again, approach backed up by where do we achieve success. And very often in our beautiful industry, one of the largest in the US, our vertical, our automotive industry, we tend to operate on how we think and feel. I can't tell you how many times a GM turned their 40-inch monitor around their desk or pointed at their wall and said, "Hey, what do you think about this campaign? Or what do you think about my refresh homepage?" It doesn't matter what I think about it. It matters what your paying customers think about it. So deploy it, A/B test it, ask them what happens to your clicks, et cetera. So everything we do needs to be data-driven. A lot of what we do is also siloed. A very important second aspect is beyond measurement. So you did this many emails, you did this many calls, you did this many text messages, opted in, hopefully everybody. What do you do with that? Are you using the other types of communication, for example, a voicemail? We know based on all the call tracking companies in automotive, at least from a retail standpoint, not B2B for a moment, that between 14 and 17% of outbound calls, everybody agrees it's under 20, are actually connected. So if you know that 85% of the time you're going to fail in that outbound phone call, why not use that to be more effective? By the way, you should have already received a text message from me outlining the details. See if you have already received the email from me about 2 hours ago that has the information. And by the way, if you don't see it in your inbox, pardon me, check your spam or junk folders. We can use the other communication methods to validate and back up our efforts. And what do we typically sound like? That voicemail sounds very disconnected from the email, sounds very disconnected from the automated, would you please opt in text message, which we have to get before we can communicate. So think about all of those touch points and measure which work and how to use the others to complement. That's where we miss a lot.
Right, to make them effective.
One thing too I would add when you talk about effective, I think it's the message as well, because so many times the medium that you use is important, but if you're trying to communicate to a woman, right? We did a survey a couple years ago about the language of closing, and it just talked about the different words that you use depending on who your audience is. So
give us an example. Give an example.
So women, for example, the word that was key for them was safety, right? Safety and convenience, versus males were more about the technical and tell me about the speed and how fast. So there was wording choices that appealed more so to women, right? And safety was one of the big ones because many women are focused on children and making sure that the vehicle is safe for them. So when you think about, to your question about effective messaging, also think about the audience and what's the right message for that audience. I think nowadays about millennials and Gen X's and Gen Y's, and the language that might work for me as a boomer might be different than what works for my nephew, right? So, and some of the words that they even use or the terminology they use, I don't even understand. What is LOL? What is LMAO? What all of these things? So, effective messaging is also making sure you take into consideration who your audience is, and that
Absolutely.
you're putting together key messaging that appeals to that audience.
A
How
couple of
important-
facets. Oh, pardon me. Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Joni.
How important is it to pull emotion out of the customer engagement strategy?
Emotion is one of those things we're going to have it doesn't matter. I think about 2020 for me personally. I went through almost every emotion you can. I was sad, I was happy, I felt like lost, I was depressed. So emotion happens through the customer life cycle as you engage with a customer from the time that they're pre-sale to all the way you're thinking about renewing. It's important to take it out because emotions drive how we respond. And if you try to be neutral, if you recognize it's going to be there and you have to control it, I just say lean more on the data. Let the data be your guide, the information, the feedback that you're getting, let that guide you versus emotion. Because I will tell you, 2020 was one of the most emotional years I think I've had in my entire life. Aside from maybe high school when I was, oh, sorry, flashback.
I would agree with that, my friend. Gary, any input?
Yeah, so two pieces. First and foremost, to go back to Kathy's prior piece about women. This is one thing we coach a lot on in every type of dealership, highline, volume, rural, metro, no matter what. And this is the only delineation is from volume brands to luxury. Depending on what type of store you're at, between 75% and for highline and extreme highline, over 80% of those purchase decisions are approved, acknowledged, or somehow signed off by a female. So remember that even if you think there's a guy's name on the lead customer, it's a prospect, let's call it what it is. So when you think about what type of communication is going out, yes, we want our customers, our prospects to be emotional. We should not be emotional. We want to convey the information. Recognize that 3/4 of the time you're dealing with a decision maker that's female. So remember that. So one other facet we have before I get to the last piece is when we're coaching, it's not only what women are looking for and the action words, it's also words to stay away from, considering that every text, every email, every phone message is going to be listened to by women. And those are what we call cul-de-sac words. No, don't, can't, never. Important one, guys, for any males that are in sales or customer service on this webinar today. But what happens when you say but to everything before that but? It wipes it out.
Yeah.
It's all but gone.
Right. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trigger words that you want to stay away from in all of your communication. The most important one, especially when you're dealing with female buyers, is I. Do not make it about yourself. Make it about the customer. And the last point to what Kathy just brought up is throughput to that. The connective tissue very often gets lost between brand promises and what we say we do and what we actually do pre-sale, during sale, and service mostly post-sale. So remember to keep the connective tissue, not just as marketing messages, all the way through to make your communication and say, again, customer engagement more effective.
I always say it's a human message. Okay, I'm going to take a really quick little break here, but I have to say something very funny. So I took this sales call and I asked, the question, which was, is safety a concern regarding the next vehicle purchase, right? And he said, no, it's for my ex-wife. Terrible.
Okay,
all right, well, guys, I love this. We're learning so much. This is amazing. I want to take 2 seconds to just emphasize again, what Women in Automotive is all about, guys. We really want to have you get stronger, better, feel that you've got people that have your back, and that's what we're here for. Don't forget that July 27th, that's a really amazing virtual workshop by Google. And the response from people, and there's been thousands that have actually gone through it, they come out just I don't know, feeling so much more empowered to achieve what they want. A lot of times even discovering what they want. So I would highly recommend referencing, going back to our Women in Automotive website. And then, as I said, gosh, we do have our in-person conference coming up December 12th and 13th in beautiful Orlando, Florida. And we can all be there, and I'm looking so forward to that. As I said before, tickets are on sale, early bird specials, guys, sign up today. Okay, I want to think about really quick what we've gone through, and I love it. You're talking about customer engagement strategy. It's like who I am, defining all of that, and making sure that the messages match. I want to know, when you talk about that process, like engagement process, how do you measure it? How do you know that what you put in place is actually working or effective? What's some input there? Kathy, what do you got?
So one of the things we do on a quarterly basis is a customer relationship survey. And that survey goes out to about 5,000 of our customers, and then we have a certain number that we'd like to get back in terms of the feedback. But that relationship survey really tells us, how is the relationship with the customer, right? And it focuses on the NPS, which is the Net Promoter Score. How likely is the customer to recommend your business, to someone else? And I will tell you, if I don't see value in a business or a company that I'm working with, I'm not likely to recommend them to anyone else. So that's the purpose of the survey. And one of the things that it helps us figure out is, well, how likely are you to recommend? How likely are you to renew with us? How likely are you to spend more with us? And then ultimately, how easy is it for us to do business? And so that feedback, with the ability for customers to type in specific text, comments, add in any editorials that they want, that type of feedback helps us to measure whether we're doing well. But I would also tell you there's the transactional based feedback. And we've started doing a lot of customer interviews. So if we do have a customer that calls in on our service line for a product related issue, and we reach back out to them to help us understand, well, if this product didn't meet your needs, what would you need it to do, or what can we add to make it better? So getting that voice of the customer feedback is one way to know if your processes are working. And then you have to be definitely fluid enough to adjust your processes as you learn more and you take in more data.
Great, I agree. Hey, Gary, your input.
Absolutely.
How do we measure?
Well, first of all, especially the world that you'd find me living in every day is very CRM based. So native measurement doesn't always give us all the answers. One of the things that we fell into backwards, you could say reverse engineered it, was numbers that determine, the same way that if traffic to a site drops, that you can end up having leads or sales drop. There's some, you can interpolate some difference 45 to 90 days later. The same thing with customer engagement, sales follow-up, service follow-up. And that is, what benchmarks, number one, do you have? Number two, how do you measure those? For us, one of those things that we fell into was, how many outbounds does it take to set an appointment? It doesn't matter if it's sales or service. And then what are those new goals? First benchmark and then goals. So when we tend to walk into a dealership, we want to see process improvement, but most importantly, engagement improvement. Being as how it costs substantially more to acquire a new customer, Kathy hit on this for B2B for sure, is it's not only less expensive to keep a customer, you'll get more effective feedback. The second metric, aside from looking at what those benchmarks are in communication to a result, it has to do with more of the customization. Again, I'm going to hit on a point that is very important, near dear to my heart, because when I started selling cars, I got away from templates as fast as possible. Customizing subject lines and engagement points 6 ways: customer location, availability, scarcity, offer, why buy. That's not only what was done by me, that's how we coach dealerships. So everything is centered around that, because our customers are with them. What's in it for me? So it's very important to have benchmarks and measuring sticks, whether or not your software, your follow-up system allows that natively. Many times you're going to have to calculate it. Again, take how you feel or how you think about it out and go to what really works. The last component in measuring how that is for us tactically in an ROI or interpreted ROI around sales and service customers. Part of what Kathy already brought up, dollars per customer. Are they increasing? Are they decreasing? A lot of what we do, because we're so automation or CRM follow-up centric, is we lost those touch points. I remember being young and watching my parents go out to consider buying vehicles, and the salespeople would call and write, in the 70s and 80s. And we seem to have lost those skill sets that matter. Pardon me, I'm not saying blocking and tackling and fundamentals. I'm talking about customer engagement. We default to those statements too much. So those three pieces are very important to us in how we assess, measure, monitor, and adjust for our customers.
Okay,
Tony,
so
I would add one other quick thing too.
Yeah, sure.
On the internal side, it's important that your employees understand what is important, because they're going to help you deliver against that engagement and meeting the needs for the customer. So having, to Gary's point of being able to lay out, here are the key ways we're going to measure, here's what will be measured, and then here's kind of what we're going to do. That's important from the employee side as well, because we rely on our employees to help deliver that, putting that customer first and that customer engagement message. So it's as important that we're looking for them as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not corny, but it is team, and there is no I in team. Hey, where does somebody begin? Because I'm always big on that. I love all this. This is great. Regardless of what is my role, but just define. So where does someone start to really improve their entire, engagement strategies and process? Where do you begin?
I think the first step is Gary.
Either way. So
I reversed it. I went to you, Gary, just to make sure you were awake.
Ladies first, most of the time. So number one, make sure, and this is a fault we see normally between marketing and sales within retail environments, as well as even a lot of other entities. Make sure everybody understands what's happening. Brand message commitment, how does the company operate, like Kathy's saying? In addition to that is what is pressing, what people see. So I'll give a very quick example in setting expectations properly. Onboarded new clients last year, August, drove up to the front of the dealership, saw their big digital messaging sign right on a big interstate. And it said, all used cars, 90 days deferred payments. Walk back into the BDC. This is the first visit. Walk back into the BDC. What's your big go-to right now for anything used cars? Nobody in the BDC
say left hand, right hand.
mention what was on that signage. So number one, it's not only always having somebody talk about core values, how do we treat our customers? It's also empowering through information those same staff, those same people that interact and touch the customers. And by the way, this is not sales service limitation if we're talking about automotive for a moment. This is, if you're in a retail environment, this is the business office. This is people getting the steps. This is people following up with plates and licensing and titling. It's everywhere the customer touches one of your human capital resources inside. Every time, every person, every way they can interact with a customer, make sure they're armed and very dangerous to tackle that customer, set expectations properly, and make them a customer for life. Customer engagement is every touch point, not just the initial, not just the last, it's everything in between. So if you're going to be real at it, as how do you start, it's understanding everything that the customer service standpoint is for your company and everybody else you do business with.
Right.
Number two, making sure you buy in and can execute on that. And thirdly, and very importantly, is talk with enough people to see if they had that experience.
Absolutely, if it's real. Kathy, last part from you. Anything on that regarding where to begin?
Yeah, so based on what Gary said, then I would then pick the right team. So it may not be your whole organization. It might be starting with some of your key leaders to help test it out, pilot it a little bit. What resources do you have available? Maybe it's your CRM solution. Maybe it's, hey, I just like writing letters. Maybe, you're a cookie company and you can send customers cookies. What's the resources and tools you have available? And then ultimately put in, how are you going to measure so that you know that you're doing it? So I think those are kind of the key pieces to at least getting started.
I completely agree. Guys, it has been a pleasure having you both so much. I think what we're saying is empower really with information, with, a combined message and direction together as a team. I have had a ball. Love you guys. Just want to remind you, August 10th, we got another lunch, and this one's going to be cool. It's on career development, allyship, mentorship, and we need it. And together as a team, we are stronger. So I'm going to give you my last parting words. I always say the same thing: never lose your sense of humor or your self-respect. I'm Joni Stuker. Thank you so much, and I will see you next month. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.